Imagine a world free from harmful stereotypes about who belongs in STEM. A place where every child can contribute to building a better future. That's our vision, and we've left no stone unturned in finding the best ways to challenge damaging stereotypes and open doors for all young people in STEM.
Targeting the early years is critical. This is when children develop their STEM identity, which influences their sense of self-worth, interest in STEM, and ultimately their future study and career decisions. Research shows that biases and stereotypes can negatively affect a child's perception of their STEM ability and career aspirations. Exposure to anti-stereotypical role models of diverse ages, genders, cultural backgrounds, and appearances can positively impact perception of STEM fields and increase STEM interest.
To understand more about the barriers young people face, we scoured the research and worked with experts on effective ways to build children's participation in STEM.
We have just completed the Big Mob STEM It Up research project, which aimed to inform evidence-based and Indigenous-informed strategies for enhancing the participation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in STEM. Our research found that the existing identified literature on Indigenous participation in STEM is small and relatively recent. We also found that just under 1/4 of Indigenous participants from the survey data reported that they did not know what STEM meant or was. This is a significant finding because if the parents and community members of Indigenous children don't know the terminology of STEM, then it is very difficult for them to encourage and support their children to take STEM career pathways. The systematic literature review highlights mostly educational barriers to Indigenous participation in STEM, but our survey data showed some different barriers that were identified by diverse Indigenous people. These are ranked accordingly: institutional barriers such as racism, individual support and self-confidence, affordability, awareness of STEM, and also educational barriers surfaced as well. So we know that schools can do this work better. We know from our data that there is a significance in community and family influence in what choices Indigenous children and young people make in terms of their career pathways. And we also know that our community values STEM. They are interested in STEM as a career and as something that can serve our communities well.
We believe that every child in Australia deserves the opportunity to fall in love with STEM. So we asked, how can we help young people discover their own strengths and encourage them to pursue a career in STEM? The answer was Future You, a free program for children aged 8 to 12 years that showcases diverse STEM career pathways.
Future You is packed with real-life and imaginary STEM career stories, hands-on activities, and fantastic role models to excite and inspire young people to explore the possibilities of STEM. The goal is to boost kids' interest in STEM by showcasing exciting career opportunities and challenging stereotypes. We also developed resources aligned with the Australian curriculum to make it easy to use in the classroom. Future You features 12 STEM professionals known as the Pathfinders. These are real people making a difference with their STEM skills. Their stories actively challenge stereotypes and promote awareness of the varied career pathways available within STEM. The Pathfinders also showcase diversity in gender identity, cultural background, geography, neurodiversity, and disability. Future You also includes the Imagining the Future fiction series, 5 short stories set in space designed to ignite the imagination of primary school-aged children and encourage their interest in STEM careers. The stories incorporate various STEM elements and are available in 3 formats to suit all learning styles. Readers go on a journey with diverse young protagonists as they confront the technological, ecological, and societal challenges of space travel and life.
And we didn't just create exciting and engaging resources. We've also connected with young people, their teachers, and families across Australia.
In 2023, we engaged directly with more than 100,000 students and teachers at conferences and events all over Australia. Through advertising placements in healthcare settings and online, We've shared our Pathfinder films with audiences totaling more than 26 million, and this number keeps growing. Another way we're connecting with Australians is through our partnership with Deadly Science. Together, we shared more than 12,000 copies of our Imagining the Future stories with more than 200 Indigenous communities and schools. Based on conversations with teachers, we created Career Pathway Infographics. When these launched, we were inundated with positive feedback from teachers and parents who were so excited to see that we had included pathways for kids who might not have the option or the inclination to go to university.
We recently conducted a research study to understand the impact Future You was having on young people and their families. After watching a Pathfinder video, 88% of children are keen to explore STEM careers. 87% see themselves working in STEM, and 81% of parents would encourage their kids to consider a STEM career. At a conference last year, a teacher shared a wonderful story with our team about the reaction of one of their students while watching Renee's film. During the film, Renee says that she can't finish a book, and a young boy jumped up and said, "Neither can I. I could be an aerospace engineer like Renee."
And that is the true purpose of Future You, to inspire kids to see themselves working in these STEM jobs in the future.
So through that video, we have heard the importance of developing early curiosity in STEM and ultimately guiding students' future to educational and career paths. So today's first session is Enhancing Diversity and Inclusivity in STEM Education. And I would love to introduce our wonderful panels for today. Cameron Rodgers, the head teacher of innovation at Sarah Redfern High School. Associate Professor Marnee Shay, the Principal Research Fellow at the University of Queensland, and Professor Lisa Harvey-Smith, Australia's Women in STEM Ambassador. Welcome today.
Thank you.
So, we have a number of questions that we'll ask our panelists, and we encourage anyone that's signed in online to add questions as well, which we'll address at the end of the session. So firstly, Marnee, as a researcher specialising in Indigenous participation, what strategies would you recommend to successfully promote Indigenous representation and engagement in STEM fields?
Thank you. Before I talk today, I just want to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Bidjigal people and pay my respect to the people of this place, and acknowledge that this place has always been a place of teaching, learning and knowledge production. So our research was extensive in understanding Indigenous success and participation in STEM. Our research showed that it's not only about getting more Indigenous people in STEM, it's actually about STEM, getting STEM to have more Indigenous knowledges and recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges. So our data from MOB, from the community survey that we ran, gave us some critical insights that weren't present within the research literature. So here's a few key highlights. Our mob see the value in STEM. That came through very, very clearly through the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Most inspiration came from the support of family and community. So a lot of current efforts are in schools and government developed programs, but we know from our data that our people are saying that their main inspiration and support has come from family and community. Another finding that we found really interesting was that just under a quarter of people didn't actually know what STEM meant. So when we're using these like terminologies, we need to understand that some people might not know what STEM is. So how can we improve systemic change in education institutions? We need to connect that to broader Indigenous education policy goals, and so we know that we're trying to improve Year 12 completion rates and a whole range of issues in education settings for Indigenous students, like addressing racism, embedding Indigenous knowledges and perspectives, getting more Indigenous people in the workforce. But also we need to fund more community-based programs that are Indigenous-led and more relevant for our communities.
Wow, thank you so much, Marnee, for sharing that. Is there any specific examples of your work that really inspire what you've done?
Well, a lot of my work is strengths-based,
Yep.
And I work with communities, so I don't go into communities and as a researcher and say, I'm interested in this. It's about listening to the needs of our communities and working in collaboration, and also sometimes what institutions, governments and researchers sometimes approach the communities with a particular problem, but communities are the experts in their community, and so the best way is to let community tell us what needs working on and what some of the solutions are.
Thank you so much. That is so important to include the people that you're working with and supporting that and co-designing that. So on the note of that, Cameron, can you tell us about why equity and inclusion and diversity is so important to you as an educator?
Of course. Before I begin as well, I'd like to also acknowledge country. We are very lucky to be here, and I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today and watching as well. Aboriginal peoples were our first scientists and educators in this country, and so it's important to continue that great work. So in regards to equity, diversity and inclusion, I think it's extremely important to really reiterate that every student, every young person in Australia has the right to quality education. And we are on those correct steps. We are taking those right steps. But from an educator perspective, I think it's really important to take in mind that if we are achieving equity, we are achieving diversity, we are going to have new solutions to problems that have never been solved before, new ideas, and this ultimately improves student life outcomes no matter what context you come from.
That's incredible. In the work of inclusion and equity, what challenges or experiences or exciting things have you been able to implement as an educator?
Of course. So to put into context, my school at Redfern High School, we're located in Minto in southwest Sydney. So we are quite socio-economically adverse. Over half our students are within the lowest socioeconomic quartile. And whilst we do face those challenges, we don't actually like to hold them back. We like to use them as pillars for success. And so that could range from things like I was previously saying, altering ideas and altering challenges and using those to solve community-based problems. So having that strength-based approach of individuals within our context and also altering context, we are able to come up with those new ideas.
Working alongside the students, learning about their strength and working with what interests them is such an exciting, inclusive way to make students ensure that they have the power to access this education and follow and pursue the potential that they have. And the work that you've done is really highlighting the potential that every student has to really achieve what they want to achieve. So thank you for that. And so my next question is about the Future You program. And so how have you used that in your teaching practice at Redfern High School? And how have you found the program? And do the students like the program? Is it a program that you feel excites them and motivates them?
Of course, yeah. So like I said, Redfern, we are quite adverse in our community. However, using the Future You program, whilst it is based towards those younger age groups, we are a high school, so we do apply those the concepts within Future You to an older age bracket. And the first thing that we actually like to do is break down barriers towards accessing STEM. So the first thing I like to get our STEAM cohorts to do at Redfern High School is to draw what they think someone within the STEM profession actually looks like. And 99% of the time, they're drawing a Caucasian, middle-aged man in a lab coat playing with chemicals. And that's just not the case. And being able to show all students, no matter your background, no matter your ethnicity, gender, that there is a way to access STEM. And that moves on to something we utilise at Redfern High School called individual education plans. And that's where we use Future You's pathway finders. And that's where we're able to really target on what students want to do and tailor curriculum to them. And what we are seeing from that are great benefits, not just whole school engagement within the STEM field, but also all the way down to improved and enhanced literacy and numeracy skills across a large range. And that's not just for our academic students. We look at also at leadership and our high performing sports people and utilising STEM concepts to improve in whatever that field they feel fit.
Individual learning plans. It's exceptionally equitable because we know that one size doesn't fit
Exactly
all.
right.
And so students have that opportunity to really shine with a program that works best for their skills, their learning styles, their aspirations and their goals. every school should have that. That's incredible. I wish I had that growing up. Question to you, Lisa. When you reflect on the Future You STEM Careers Initiative, what elements do you think have been the most successful?
Well, firstly, I love listening to teachers and experts. You know, they're the ones using Future You. And you know, when we started off with this program, you know, we were given funding from the government to create a program, and we worked, you know, on what that might look like. One step we missed in our kind of rush, this is several years ago, to create something amazing was really that deep listening. And it's hard because you have to create a prototype, and you have to actually go out and listen, say, what do you need as teachers? And I went around the country and listened to teachers about what they needed. But I realised it was much deeper than that. It depended on the school, and it depended on the context, the I guess socio-economic environment, the physical environment, the cultural environment of the school. So once we've gone through a few iterations of Future You, we've really landed now on something wonderful where I think what we're doing is linking STEM career concepts, aspirations, role models to core Australian curriculum. So what you can do then, as we know in primary schools, many primary schools don't have a STEM specialist teacher. They have a number of teachers who cover many different subjects. So you have to really, in primary schools in particular, tie things to the core curriculum, to literacy, to all those concepts, you know, critical thinking and so on. And when we did that, and that was really the brainchild of Hilary Schubert-Jones, our program manager in the last 2 years, then that really transformed the program and enabled it to be used, I think, within the curriculum. So it wasn't a STEM lesson, it wasn't a careers lesson. There's no word necessarily for that in a busy school curriculum. But if you say this is about you know, thinking about the future, or it's about comprehension, or it's about, you know, the English language, whatever it is, you're looking then at broadening young people's horizons. I think that's a wonderful thing. But yeah, I really appreciate both your comments, because it's good to actually hear what people need and have that reminder to keep these two ears open when you're trying to create things for people.
So on the work of the Future You program, was there initially any resistance or any barriers and challenges from either of you at your schools or with the students? Because you mentioned the students, you know, drawing what they thought someone in STEM. So that's not diverse, it's not intersectional, it doesn't take into account Indigenous people, it doesn't take into account people from refugee backgrounds, a whole bunch of different intersectionalities. And so how were you able to really motivate students to really feel that this is a possibility for them? And did the other teachers also hop on board? Was there that resistance, or was it something quite easily implemented in schools, and where would you like to see it go from here?
Of course. So I guess to follow from your question, I think the two most important concepts for us to understand, to broaden young individuals' thoughts about and mindsets on STEM is perception and belief. And that's what Future You really does instill. Like I said, it's not just the white male in a lab coat. It could be a truck driver. It could be a rugby league player. There are STEM concepts in a lot of professions, and that's where Future You really does broaden up. And we have significant data showing that no matter your gender, no matter ethnicity now at Sarah Redfern High School, from the use of Future You, we have 97% of students who now feel that the STEM field is accessible to them, because it's not just that lab coat, stereotype. But in terms of broader access, I know we have a lot of educators watching today. It is a free resource. It is already made. It saves time. And so when we were implementing that into Sarah Redfern High School and into broader programs, there was no addition of time. It was only value adding. So nothing but positives from me, and the kids absolutely love the engaging stories, the engaging visuals, and like I said, an instillment of belief. Yeah.
Incredible. Was there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I love the thing. I love hearing this again. Thank you for the insights. But again, because I think it's very multiplicative. Like you can create new pathfinders, new role models in so many different in so many different fields. And what I love as well, one of the resources is the career pathway infographics.
Yes.
So if you get, for example, a heavy vehicle mechanic, Louise, who we feature in the Pathfinder series of Future You, then there is an infographic which is created about the number of different ways that Louise could get from where she was in school or from her young life through different education pathways. They might be through leaving school at 16, they might be through vocational training, apprenticeships, they might be going through university and circling back to that career. And there are many varied ways to get to the same place. So that's really something that we want to instill in teachers in particular, that you don't have to go to university, you don't have to go straight to TAFE, or you don't have to do this or that. There is many, like all of us have had a varied career pathway probably, with twists and turns, and all of us will know the benefit of explaining to young people, if you make a decision now, it's not going to affect your whole life. There are other ways to be involved in STEM, to use your STEM skills in life, and you don't have to be a scientist, you don't have to be an engineer. Those are great careers, but there is so much more out there, and you can use those skills in your community to solve problems, to actually do things that people care about and create value and purpose for our communities. So that's what it's about. So I'm glad we can keep developing it and multiplying and adding value with partners in the community.
It is an incredible resource that really incorporates every student for what they want to achieve and can aim to achieve, and give that representation that you've just mentioned in some of the case studies, which makes students feel that they can do anything, and they have the support from their teachers and from their schools, which is so hard to find sometimes, and it's really appreciated, I'm sure, by tons of students. I do want to ask, the next question is to Marnee. How can educators create opportunities for Indigenous students to excel in STEM education and careers?
Well, the first thing is showcasing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander excellence. So we're all familiar with the deficit ideas and stories that continue to cycle through the media and sometimes, sadly, through educational institutions. But we've got a lot of people trailblazing in STEM, and so part of our work on the Big Mob STEM It Up project was developing a podcast series to showcase our mob that are succeeding in STEM. So if you haven't listened to them, they're an excellent classroom resource, and I highly recommend them. It's also about recognising community voices and the voices of our elders, and that rich Indigenous STEM knowledge that it is in communities, that is all part of Indigenous young people seeing themselves in the curriculum, and understanding that we're part of a knowledge system that's tens of thousands of years old, and that's something to be proud of. So it's instilling that sense of being proud of who we are as Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people, and creating a positive sense of identity as a learner, just in general, and that will hopefully translate into someone pursuing STEM if that's what they choose to do. And I also think it's about providing encouragement to participate in those types of programs. Excellent. Deadly Science, if you're not familiar with Deadly Science, check them out.
Thank you so much, Marnee. In what you've just expressed and shared, that you're showcasing other First Nations, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander people in this work. It's all about that representation, and you mentioned the stereotypes and the preconceived notions about Indigenous people, and really that impacting what a student or student can become in the future. Has that representation really meant something to you as well as the community, and how has that really benefited all that work?
Oh, definitely. When I went through school, which I won't say what year that was, but there was no Indigenous authored books in my time. There was, our role models were in our community. They're our mums, aunties, uncles, nans, pops. So our role models, in terms of being Indigenous, are in community. Now we have this wonderful array of resources that are Indigenous led and developed, and schools can draw from those. But I also encourage schools to consider where they are because every community, we are a very diverse community. And so when I'm talking about Indigenous people today, I recognise you were talking about intersectionality, that, we didn't even get a chance to sort of look into, an Indigenous person who, with gender diversity and all of the other diversities that, like any other population, we have as well. So, often we're sort of just lumped into that group. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Absolutely. Actually, you took the words right out of my mouth. Just that diversity of First Nations, Indigenous people. It's not just that. You're not a monolith. There's, queer Aboriginal people.
Absolutely.
There's disabled Aboriginal people. There's so many types of, there's so many types of communities that Aboriginal can also be a part of, and that multi-marginalisation.
Yes.
And in the work that you've done, do you feel that it has addressed that, and is there that representation that a disabled Aboriginal student feels that they could achieve?
Yeah, no, we didn't. We sort of had the privilege with Lisa. We sort of surveyed what's there. Where are we? And we know that there wasn't that diversity within the evidence, the literature, and also the new evidence that we developed through the research. So we only really just scratched the surface, but I feel like we know where we need to go, and there's a lot of work to be done in that area. And I think if there's lots of school people watching today, it's just that reminder that there are some wonderful resources out there, but often, they don't represent, the diversity. Sometimes we need to create our own resources.
So what we love to say is, as scientists, isn't it, and researchers, we need more data. So
Yes.
if the ARC want to fund us, then great.
Exactly.
To do that.
Thank you so much for that. Recognising that even when you mention your students coming from a low SES background, but they must have also other
100%.
diversities. They, part of the LGBTIQA community, have disabilities, or coming from a certain background, and really connecting that. So that's why I go back to that individual learning plan, and really highlighting the student for who they are as they are, and what interests them and what their strengths are, rather than focusing on a deficit or gaps model that they don't have. And that is, well, I'm motivated, and I'm not in high school anymore, but it's just really exciting to know that exists. I wish that existed when I was going through high school, because it's so much work to really go, how can I be something that isn't represented if there aren't people like me on TV, or doing all the work and, really showing us that it is possible. Then how does that happen? So I'm really grateful to have this conversation with you all and be able to share that experience. On to my next question. Pardon me. So questions to all of you. So how do you see the role of others outside the school systems, families and communities in helping to inspire interest in STEM? I'm going to go with Lisa. You go first.
Well, we know, there's a lot of research on this, isn't there? We understand that, as you said, Marnee, earlier, your research found that community and family are very, very much influential on young people's decisions, their aspirations, but also the way they view the world. And of course, we're raised by our families and our communities. That's a wonderful thing. But one of the things that can happen is that people pass on not only culture, but they pass on stereotypes and preconceptions. And that's one of the challenges I find. And this is why I write children's books about science, and this is one of the things that's most joyful for me in that activity, is actually talking to parents and grandparents, especially grandparents. Grandparents are amazing. They're amazing, right? They are our greatest loves when we're children. In general, people have really good relationships often with their grandparents. And they have that wisdom, they have the time and presence to be able to influence us. And as I say, that wisdom to be able to really guide the bigger picture questions that parents might be a bit too busy and, tied, their hands tied with lots of things that they have to do on an everyday basis. So I think talking to those grandparents and parents and bringing them along on the journey is really, really important. So I think something for the future, for Future You, is not just reaching out to teachers and careers advisors and so on, but also to those parents and family groups, explaining to them why this is so important. That young people not necessarily go into STEM, you don't think of it like that, but use their STEM skills and keep an open mind to learn and adapt and be curious about the world and think about how they can use those skills to really help society. And I think that's a wonderful message. I'll be evangelical about that until the day I die.
Amazing. Cameron?
I'd just like to echo Lisa's point. Obviously, as an educator, communication and connection with parents and carers is extremely important in order to support a young person's education. And so that's where we work closely with our parents, whether it be virtual or even just a phone call. And sometimes bringing along the parents and carers, grandparents, they are always the biggest supporters. Bringing them on that journey as well, we find that we're able to support not only the student, but also them, instilling belief in them that their student can, or their child can achieve these things, and that broadening the scope, that STEM is not just a doctor, that it is a range of different areas and different fields and different applications. And with community, we focus very heavily on community within our STEAM program at Redfern High School. Within contexts such as ours, sometimes young people might not have a lot and community is all they have. And that's where we rely on each other as a community. And so what we like to do is we like to focus on community-based problems and utilise those individual education plans, those strengths of those young individuals to solve community-based problems. So whether that be a student that enjoys 3D modelling to promote conservation of Campbelltown's koala population, or whether that be someone's programming insightfulness to create a robotic arm to save hospital waiting room time at Campbelltown. These are the steps that we look to in a multifaceted approach, not only us helping the community, but the community helping us as well. And what we're seeing from that is a well-rounded, holistic student.
Wow. That is really awesome. Those projects, like the creativity as well. So STEM, people just often think of science and that's it. And there's so much to it, which is so exciting. Did you want to add anything else, Marnee?
No, probably Lisa mentioned that our data did show very clearly that, outside of the school was the greatest support for many of our mob that participated in the research. So it's about recognising the strengths and knowledges that exist in the community, and there's a history there, around schooling and our people, Indigenous Australians. So sometimes schools need to make a bit more effort and go out of the school gate. If parents are hesitant to engage with the school, there's often a reason, and so sometimes schools need to understand that and sort of put things in place to put the hand out and make people feel welcome, and sometimes that happens in the community, not in the school grounds, to build up that trust.
Absolutely. With community and with the work and all what you've mentioned in the support on what you mentioned before in relation to stigma and low expectations and having the stereotypes unfortunately perpetuated by media, how has the work you've done convinced parents that that students can do what they want to do and achieve their dreams without that internalized stigma or that internalized thought that unfortunately the media does portray in a certain way, and it impacts a student's self-confidence, self-esteem and all of that?
Well, I don't know if the work I've done has done that. I think as researchers probably a little less certain than scientists in terms of the research we do. But a lot of the research program I've developed over almost 10 years now has been about privileging the voices of our people, especially young people. A lot of the time, we're just over 50% of our population is under the age of 25. Wow. So we're a young population, and we really need to listen to our future elders and leaders, and it's about providing space to listen. And so I use a lot of methodologies in my research, and I'm really interested in ensuring that we get to hear from people in our community that we don't usually get to hear from. And then I'm privileged to have a platform to be able to share those views and and help inform policy. Sometimes if policymakers are interested in the evidence. So
I think you're selling yourself short there. You're like, no, I can't answer this question. And then you have this incredible answer that incorporates all of that. So thank you. Another question to all of you. How can we integrate cultural relevance and diversity into STEM curriculum to ensure all students feel represented and valued in their learning experiences? I'll go with Cameron first.
I guess from what Marnie's saying, with of course in southwest Sydney, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population is quite large, and that to ensure that we are meeting the needs of those individuals. I think when we talk about social justice, yes, there's equity, yes, there's diversity, but creating supportive environments, culturally responsive environments for those individuals is extremely important. And within the STEM field, we have an excellent Aboriginal education team at Redfern High School, led by Uncle Shay Williams, who is our community elder. And being able to apply things like enhancing force to increase the Woomera strength and those bits and pieces. So breaking that down whilst creating that connection. But going back to my point about connections with community, of course, we are going to have a large, diverse area within southwest Sydney. And so really being able to focus on individual potential and individual student likeliness is extremely important for us to be able to cater towards those individuals and go to the very first point I said, which is every student. So every student has the right to a quality education.
Which is all about equity.
Exactly right, yes.
Lisa?
Look, I don't know if I have a lot to add, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not an education
No.
practitioner, so I would take your points and just listen to them and be very interested in that, because a lot of schools where I've been don't include community very well, and I've seen that and a great number of times, and a few have, and I've been really impressed when I've seen that. That's really just an observation, but I would hope that people watching could think about, even if they already do think they include community, there's always room to expand, so to keep thinking about how you can continue to do that.
And community means something, it might mean something different for every student. It might not be family, students might not have that, but having that connection and feeling that support and having teachers really encourage, or educators really encourage to support that, makes a big difference, to not feel that you're alone, that you can't get through it. I don't think being a teenager in high school is the most fun experience all the time. I'm not sure everybody else's upbringings, but it's so great that these are resources that you can really implement and highlight and get that potential out of the student and work with whatever their community is, whether that's grandparents or guardians or carers or a group of friends that really support and encourage each other, or have similar marginalizations, like a group of queer friends or a group of friends that have disabilities, and really work on connecting and supporting them to really feel that they can achieve what they want to achieve, and to have these resources and the research and the work that's done to implement that makes such a big difference. We are almost finished with today's panel. I would like to ask, what 3 takeaways that you would like the audience to have from the work that you've done, whether it's research-based, whether it's educator-based, so that they can really take this on board if they are educators, or if they can even use these skills in their own roles if they're not educators, to really implement and support equity in STEM and equity in education and accessing the education. And can I start with you, Marnee?
Sure. So number 1, embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into the curriculum. We're very fortunate, as I said, to be in a time where there are amazing resources around, but don't forget the knowledge in your local community. Number 2, don't assume people know what you're talking about when you're saying STEM and other technical language. Break down barriers and get to know how people different ways of communicating. Try those strategies. And number 3, really understand and value and relish the strength of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders and community and families, because that is one of the biggest parts of our data, was that that's where our mob get our strength from. So
Respecting culture, respecting the TO, the traditional owners, acronyms. So I need to do
It's cultural capital.
right
there.
And that cultural competence and safety, and really supporting that with the communities you're working with. Thank you for that, Marnee.
Thank you,
Cameron.
Well, I guess my first point would be towards our educators watching today. Some of the things I probably talked about, they may sound big, they may sound scary, they may sound very timely for a school context, but in reality, they're just a conversation. And having a conversation with your students sounds so simple, but it could be the most powerful moment of a child's day. And instilling that perception and that belief is one of the most important things that we can do as educators to enhance student, the holistic student wellbeing. The second part as well is, I guess, with engaging with people at industry and university, sometimes that, again, may be a scary thing, but it's quite as easy as reaching out and asking the question. That's how Redfern High School developed such a great relationship with the Future You project, was by reaching out and asking for advice, asking for help. So don't be afraid to go to community, to industry, and ask for help and ask for advice. And most of the time, you're going to get a yes. And last but not least, I just want to, really, really push forward in that every student is different, and that we should be meeting the needs of those students. And I feel that we are on those right steps. And I'm very excited to see where we're going to go from here.
Thank you so much, Cameron. And every different student is also different.
Exactly right.
So, like, one student with a disability isn't the same as every other student with a disability. So really, and every First Nations Indigenous student isn't exactly the same as others. So really working alongside them and getting that understanding that marginalised communities aren't monoliths. We all have different personalities, strengths, goals, aspirations. So it's really exciting to know that that is a part of the work that's being done, and that representation, and knowing that there is possibility. And to you, Lisa.
Well, maybe from personal experience, the first one, which would be that learning and inspiration come by doing, trying things, and being allowed to fail, being encouraged to fail in very much in quotation marks. I think a lot of people think that science in particular is about learning things and then being right and defending those things. It's not about that. It's a process of exploration and questioning, and being wrong is part of science, because you're testing ideas, and being wrong and humble is an important job of a scientist, a good scientist. Maybe some scientists don't realise that. I forgot that page in the book. But what I guess what I'm getting at is that when I was at primary school, I looked up at the stars with my dad. I tell this story often, and that's where my love of astrophysics came from. It was just standing in my garden in a small village in the southeast of England with my dad, looking up. Cost nothing. Pretty much everyone can do it. Everyone can experience the stars in various ways. So what that teaches us is that a whole lifetime of passion can come from a moment where the internet wasn't there. There were no mobile phones. There were no distractions, right? Maybe we turned the telly off. But nowadays there are so many more distractions. So an educator, a parent, a family member, anyone who influences a young person, just by asking a question or just by allowing them to lead an experience, you can create a deep passion in that person. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to guide them to what you want them to be interested in as well. It's about learning from them and listening from what they're interested in. It's hard to put that into a curriculum context, into a formalised educational context, but you can do it. You can achieve that, and you know that as an educator who clearly has a fantastic program that allows that tailoring of individualised learning for students. I'm very passionate about that. I actually taught myself instead of going to school from the age of 11 to 16. So everything I did in those 5 years was up to me. It was my passion. And I'm a great believer in allowing people to really explore in that way. So that wasn't three things, but it was one big thing. And that thing was let kids explore.
Yeah, absolutely. That lived experience, that connection, that recognition of everybody being different, even if they're parts of certain groups and communities, and really supporting what a child wants. So, you know, you look up at the stars and you want to be an astrophysicist. That's incredible. And other students and their experience in that makes such a big difference to really ensuring that the child, the student, is being listened to, and they're not being pushed a certain way. I was pushed a certain way. My parents were refugees. They wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or a pharmacist. I'm neither one of those. I did go and, you know, do a science degree and do nutrition dietetics and blah, 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 blah. But it just wasn't for me. But because I didn't have teachers that really advocated for me, or researchers that said, actually, you should really listen to your child and what they want to learn and how they want to learn it, because it's so important, because then you didn't just have a massive HECS debt for no reason. Not to say that I didn't learn from my degrees and I didn't get knowledge from that, but if I had teachers like yourself or researchers that really went around and really highlighted that significance of everyone can really benefit from just being listened to, from really being pushed to recognize their potential, that they have support, that they have community, that they have teachers. And maybe some of the participants online today, they might be thinking about when they were growing up, what teacher had the most influence on them? Did they listen to them? Did they recognize that they struggled with certain things and help them and support them through that? And sometimes that didn't happen, and sometimes it did. And so having and recognizing that, we can all, I hope, think about an educator growing up in our lives, or someone in our lives that's really shaped us to be who we are. So it's really great to have listened to that story, Lisa, because it's awesome. It's really awesome and really great how that's influenced yourself. And we're almost out of time for this session, and we will see if there are questions from the audience that, yep. Pardon me, I'm being told to look at my iPad, but no questions are coming in. So please send me questions. Sorry, technical error. I don't have any questions. So we don't, okay. So I apologize, my iPad technology is not working, it seems. I can throw to all of you in relation to, do you have, or did you have an experience like Lisa did, or someone that you really motivated you to have or be in the careers you are in? Can I start with you, Marnee?
Yep. I wasn't expecting that question.
Sorry.
Look, yeah, I think growing up, so I grew up with, well, my mum raised us, so my mum is my Aboriginal parent, so I grew up, you know, with a strong sense of who I am in terms of my culture and identity. And mum really valued education, so she was very strong on you're finishing school, even if I have to drag you to school and drop you there every day. So that sort of wasn't an option not to finish school. And then, look, there's no one I've had so many influences. I'm very lucky. I've got aunties that just have nurtured me. My uncle Boyd, who's passed away now, he played a big influence in supporting me, particularly when I went back to study, because I went back to study after having a career as a teacher. I didn't quite expect to go back and study, but and then it's taken me on this path that I'm on now, and I'm loving it. I love being a researcher, and I love working in schools and communities. So yeah, I've had lots of inspiration and mentors, and and I get a lot of inspiration from the people I work with in communities and schools. So yeah,
that's really exciting. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cameron.
Yeah, I guess my story's pretty similar to the context I work in. That's why I feel so passionately about it. From the southwest of Sydney, single mother raised me, and I had two loves in my life, and one was rugby league and the other Steve Irwin. So I was convinced all the way until the age of 17 that I was going to be a professional rugby league player. I was extremely young at high levels of rugby league with the Cronulla Sharks, until multiple concussions kind of stopped that pathway. And obviously that led me down some pretty rough tracks in the area I was in. And so having my teachers really support me, I had to learn from year 9 pretty much all over again, all the way into year 12 in which I was in, to get into the Doctor of Medicine, which I eventually was able to do and started off. However, it didn't feel right to me. I wanted to be able to support the same Cameron Rodgers in a classroom or whoever, a young individual, to hopefully change their life for the better. So I guess, the Steve Irwin angle is definitely the one I'm going for now.
Have you got
I've got a crocodile behind me. I'll bring it out.
Did you want to be a rugby league crocodile strangler?
Bit of both, why not?
Mix it all together. I'm happy to say that the questions have come through. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll just ask one of them, and because it's come up a few times, it is addressed towards you, Marnee. How can you help build pride among Indigenous people and people with multiple, or I guess to everyone, marginalised identities, to have that pride within themselves to achieve?
That's a great question, and we finished a project a number of years ago that was about building, I guess, affirming identities, because we have our identities and we have our cultures, but when you're put in a space that doesn't recognise who you are and doesn't value who you are, you tend to question your identity. So we worked with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people and used a lot of strengths-based workshops and culturally based workshops with local elders across 6 communities in Western Australia and Queensland. And what we found from that project was that schools really need to be proactive in creating identity-affirming spaces for young people. So again, we've talked about the different diversities within Indigenous peoples and communities, and we've circled back to this numerous times. It's about recognising the strengths and knowledges from those communities and where we grow up and where we get our knowledges from. And you can do that in so many ways through embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. You mentioned culturally responsive pedagogies, very important. Bridging relationships between schools and communities. We know it's bringing in diverse role models into classrooms. Again, we're in a time where there are so many excellent resources for teachers in doing that through, TV shows. We've now got representation. It's just wonderful. But bring those into your classroom and don't put it on to the Indigenous young people in your class to do that work. And you, most importantly, might have to do some work about yourself. Who are you as a teacher?
Exactly.
And how have you come to know about Indigenous people? Because it might not be, correct. We know
Probably
that there's...
Probably not.
Yeah. So through, and of course, relationships, everything. Relationality is very important to us. So, build relationships that are reciprocal and...
Thank you. That's an incredible response. We are out of time, but did either of you want to share anything before we wrap up today's panel with the first session?
Oh, look, it's been such a great conversation. It really resonates with me about those safe spaces. I grew up as a young gay person, and one of the reasons I didn't go to secondary school was because the school uniform excluded me. I would have been forced to wear a skirt, and that wasn't acceptable to me. So I didn't go to school. So that's just one example of barriers that we put up. And there might be physical barriers, there might be psychosocial barriers, cultural barriers, and we might not even realise. So looking at yourself as a great, as an educator or as a professional, wherever you work, and keep doing that. And we all should be examining what we create and the shadow that we cast.
You wanted to be representation for other Cameron Rodgers out there. That's incredible.
Not sure how many of them are.
Other students.
Yeah,
in your
exactly
position.
right.
Yeah.
No, I think, and kind of what we were going off before, the education field, the education profession is so empowering. It's such an amazing profession to be a part of, but having to look in the mirror sometimes is the hardest thing to do as an educator. Even for myself, instilling Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pedagogies within practice at first seemed really difficult, but learning and listening, not just from our community partners, our elders, our parents, families, but also the students, was extremely important to be able to understand them and their understandings of the world. So I'm just really proud to be in the education field right now and really looking forward to where we can go.
Oh no, thank you so much. That is a wonderful note to finish on. Thank you so much again to Marnee, to Cameron, and to Lisa for today's for the first panel. So thank you so much. We are going to have a short 10-minute break now, and during this break, we'll ask the audience to please share 1 to 3 words or phrases that describe the Women in STEM Ambassador Initiative. We will look at the results after the 10-minute break. You'll see on the right side of the broadcast screen where you can add your phrases or your questions. We'll see you soon in 10 minutes. Thank you.